This conference will now be recorded.
Peter Taka.
I am here.
Wonderful. Christina.
Here.
Great. Steph.
Yes.
Ani. Matt Clark.
Here.
Great. Mike Perry. Okay. And Lisa Wolf.
Mike McCoo.
Yes, Pete.
Before we get into this real deep, which email address did you send it to me on? I'm not seeing it on.
Town.
No, I can't get to my town right now. So if you could forward it to my Gmail address, I'd appreciate it. I believe you have it.
I do.
Is there a password for this meeting?
Okay, Pete, that's done. Okay, we have all of our regular members, so I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:05. It's 7:04 right now, and the alternates can arrive when they arrive. Okay, it's 7:05 p.m. It's Mike McCoo, Chairman, Willington Board of Finance, calling to order the Town of Willington Board of Finance meeting for Thursday, May 21st, year 2020. We have all our members present. We do not need to seat alternates. We'll go to present to speak. Public participation is desired and encouraged. And we'll start as we have been with looking at the video screens first because we can see people waving. So if any member of the public would like to speak, we will get to you, and then we'll go to the phones as well. Lori Semperbon, I think I saw your hand first. Lori, you're trying to get audio?
We can't hear her.
Okay, let's move on. We'll come back to you, Lori, I promise. All right. I don't know how to identify everybody here on screen.
Okay, Sarah Smith.
Yeah, let's let Sarah go.
Okay, I'm not sure exactly what'll come up tonight, but I'm concerned about cutting teachers' positions or staff at the schools. I really don't see how that would reduce taxes significantly. If someone could give me information, some data, I would really appreciate that. I think the teachers and staff administration have been very heroic. They've done a lot to combat our food insecurity, and the teachers are in contact with the families to try to tailor the learning and to offer social and emotional support. And I just don't think during the coronavirus crisis and everything that our heroes and heroines are doing for us, that this is the time to freeze their pay, which is not going to happen without, because it's a union issue, or to just say, okay, let's cut some teachers because that's going to save us money. I don't think that that is cost effective in the long run. And we do have, what, 205 million in our fund. So I don't understand the need to cut the education budget at all. And I moved to this town 40 years ago because of the education. And you have to keep something to attract people to come into this town. If you do not, they are taxpayers and they will contribute money. So we need to keep the quality of life in the town, and that means the quality of our schools. And I think for anybody that we propose cutting their job at the municipal level or in the schools, you are putting somebody on the unemployment rolls who is probably a Willington resident. So I hope everybody will think about what they do. I've been impressed with how the school board has worked very hard to make things cost. They've cut costs wherever they possibly can. Thank you for letting me, speak my mind.
Thank you. Next person, can we get someone waving their hands? Lori Semperbon, are you in yet?
I've called in, but I think I'm on.
No, we can hear you.
Okay. All right, thanks. I for some reason I couldn't get my voice on the audio. Lori Semperbon, 271 Turnpike Road. As the treasurer of the town, I would just like to let you know that we have, decent fund balance. And I think if, you guys have been doing some good work. I know we're trying to have a tight budget, but I think if you look at the rest of what you have, and if you accept the budgets that they've given, we will leave a little extra in the fund balance in case, the state doesn't fund. We don't know yet. We won't know until July what the state is going to do for funding. And I think if we have a little extra in the fund balance and keep the mill rate where it is, I think we'll be in good shape.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other present to speak, wave your hand if you're on video, please. Yes, I don't know how to identify. I see a woman with glasses on waving. I don't know who it is.
Janice,
Go
Janice,
ahead.
Janice Castle, 18 Penny Hill Road. Can you hear me?
Yes, and now I recognize you. I'm sorry. I have a lot of little tiny screens here.
Out of context. It's all right. I am an employee of the town, one of those teachers at school, and I know that education budget is one of the things we're looking at tonight. And I would encourage you to leave it as the Board of Ed has presented it to you. They worked really hard. I was at most of their meetings, and they've worked really hard to come up with something that is going to be the best for our students in town. And I don't think that going ahead in a pandemic, yes, a lot of us, my husband's out of work as like many other people. But one of the things that's, we don't know what's coming in the fall, and to cut our budget now is kind of maybe like cutting off our foot. We might be coming back to the town for more money because we don't know what those options are going to be and what things are going to look like in the school in the fall. So cutting is not a good idea in my estimation. We have a good fund balance, and I know I was reading minutes that said that it was 8 to 12% is recommended to have our fund balance, and we have, if we use that 400 and some thousand, that will still give us 14% from the calculations that I saw from Donna. So I would encourage us to use that fund balance. This is that rainy day that we should be using that money and leave our education budget where it is. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mindek, did I see you waving your hand before?
How you doing, everyone? Rich Mindek, Chairman of the Economic Development Commission. Thanks for taking the time to hear me out. I apologize that I missed the last week's meeting, and I understand there was some discussion about the EDC's budget. I'm only here tonight to ask that the board reconsider restoring the EDC budget to the originally requested amount of 25 grand. And really the main reason for the request is that I think that it's a pressing need in our local community. I mean, I think everyone is driven by the Phelps Plaza recently and seen some of the work that's been done, sprucing up the building. I know we have lots and more coming into that space. And right now, I really think that this is a crucial time for the town to approve a budget like this, only because we have a really good plan in place. We're working together with Mike D'Amato, as you know, really great with his team. And we have a plan in place to review some of the zoning regulations, to look at some of the home occupancy regulations, signage, parking, density. So those are a lot of the things that we're going to do with that money, and you're going to see some real effect in the town that you've already started to see. So I respectfully request that you go back and look at the numbers, and if you have any room to allow us to get that 25 grand, I think it's really going to benefit the town for the future.
Thank you, Mr. Mindek. Pete Latentich, did you wave before? I didn't hear what you said.
I said, I'm waiting for my opportunity. Thank you.
Okay. Feel free. This is your opportunity.
Right. Peter Latentich, 97 Trask Road. I want to give some feedback on achieving a completed budget. I would strongly suggest that you consider holding the budgets to the 2019-2020 level. And with the decrease in Region 19, there would be effectively a slight actual decrease in a net 3 budget situation, which I think would be very beneficial for the town. I think you're almost there with the appropriations process you went through on the town side, and that's proceeding well. And I think there was some good support from the selectmen at their last meeting in the CIP area helping that. Close on the Board of Education side. However, I agree with Sarah and Jan that either positions or programs should be cut. The school places a high value, the town places a high value on our school system. And we show that by spending 80 cents of every town dollar on education. However, as here, we're all in this together. And I would like to see the school help with that, because only they're in a position to do that because they fundamentally control their own budget. The Board of Finance only has up or down control. What I would suggest is with the funds from this year to remove approximately $200,000 from the static areas of supplies, commodities, purchase services, and prepay those, as was previously discussed. That would not cut a single program, would not cut a single position. It would mean more work for the town financial manager, which I encourage at my own risk. And that could get them to zero as well and place the town in a strong position to move into the future, which is quite unknown. Lastly, I would say, please focus Board of Finance not on mill rates. Remember, the town does not vote on a mill rate. The town, in which case is you in your new role this year via the governor's order, are voting on a spending budget on the spending side of the budget. Your action on the mill rate only occurs after you've passed that spending budget. So I encourage you to focus strongly on getting both budgets to zero. And then once that budget is completed, reviewed by the public and passed, you'll have an opportunity to address the mill rate and apply fund balance as may be needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. I see Michelle Cunningham. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Michelle Doucette Cunningham, 41 Liska Road. I'd like to speak in opposition to the advice that Mr. Latinshish just gave you, because I think that to some degree this is a little bit about the mill rate, because that's how it affects the taxpayers. But remember, we haven't had a tax increase in a couple of years now, so we're not in dire straits. We have a really good reserve fund. Now, the rule of thumb for the municipal reserves is 5 to 10%. If you're really conservative, it's 12%. And that's so that you have money in the bank when it's a rainy day. We have significantly more than 12%. And I know that because when we negotiate with the teachers' unions, with the Board of Ed, or I'm sure happens in other places, it's one of the issues that they look at, and whether or not your town has adequate capacity to pay for the things that are under negotiation. And we are always at a really big disadvantage because we are really flush with cash according to what the guidelines are. It might not feel like we're flush when people are hurting and people are out of work. I recognize that. But it's really time for us to recognize this is the rainy day. It's fine for us to spend down to the very conservative 12% and not cut further than that just to meet some underlying goal of keeping budgets to 0%, because really a 0% budget is a cut in program. It means that if you meet your contractual obligations, which of course have some built-in cost of living expenses with that you have to account for, the money has to come from someplace, so you have to cut program. It would have to cut a position or cut something significant. And I think that both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education have brought to you budgets that have been trimmed down, and they've been trimmed down pretty significantly. I think you should work yourself backwards, figuring out what it would take if you spent down the reserve to at least 12%, and then see if you still need to make cuts. But don't start with some false anticipation that it has to be zero or it has to be what it was last year. Let's look at what the community needs to keep programs the same. We're not asking for some big new flush programs. We're asking for just status quo. And I think that's really reasonable. So I urge you to look really at what the town needs, and that is to pass both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education budgets as they've been presented to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in video present to speak, please wave your hand. Okay, I don't think I see any more in video. People, oh, yes, I do. Can you state your name, please?
Can you hear?
We've got a couple of people. Someone say your name, we'll pick you.
It's Tracy Anderson, but she's muted.
Thanks for the help on the identification, Erica. Tracy, can you hear us? Yeah, we cannot hear you. All right, we'll take another shot at it in a minute. Anyone else in video, wave your hand.
Oh, she's unmuted now.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Are you ready for me?
Yes, go ahead, Tracy.
Okay. Am I allowed? I have a letter from a friend that I'd like to read on their behalf. I agree with it, so you can put it under me if you'd like, but I can state her name as well.
Just go ahead and state your name and tell us what you want to tell us.
Tracy Anderson, 151 Willington Hill Road. Dear members of the Board of Finance, I'm writing to ask you to strongly consider accepting the budget already proposed by the Board of Education. I understand that increasing budgets is not going to happen during this time, but we should seek to maintain the quality of education for students in this town. When we moved to Connecticut 19 years ago, we chose Willington because of the schools and proximity to Uconn. One way to better the town finances is to encourage families to move here. We will never compete with surrounding towns if we slash our education budget. A budget is a statement of values, and I encourage you to please value the education of our community. From Christine Farrar, 22 Angeline Lane. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in video, wave your hand, please. Okay, I don't think I see anyone else. Anyone on phone? Mike, can you unmute the phones?
Yep.
Anyone on phone who would like to speak during present to speak, please call out.
Hello, this is George Zepsky.
Go ahead, George. Your name and address again, please.
George Zepsky, 12 Fenton Bluffs Drive, Willington. I just want to bring everybody's attention to the reality of what's happening in our town and in our state. I want to give you two examples as you consider all this. Willington is a epicenter for the problems with the crumbling foundations. I think everybody knows this. My neighborhood's been devastated. I have people that have replaced their foundations. I have people that actually tore their houses down and they're rebuilding them. And the town wanted to even build them for a new building permit until they objected. People that walked away from homes. I mean, it's pretty disastrous. I also have friends that work for Collins Aerospace, and they were promised 3% increase this year. In January, they were told that that's no longer going to happen. In February, all of the contracted positions were basically eliminated. And in March, they were told that they will be taking a 10% pay cut across the board and a 2-week vacation, unpaid vacation. And I just heard that they're talking about a second round of this. And I do appreciate that we need to fund the town and we need to do the things that need to be done. But I think at some point, reality needs to set in as to what is happening to the people on the other side of the fence. We're talking about saving positions, doing increases, where those people that are actually paying for that are losing positions. They're losing their homes. They're losing money out of their pay. They get unpaid vacations. And I think there needs to be a fair approach to this across the board. So I would urge the Board of Finance to seriously take a look at that and compare and be fair to both sides of the coin, the people that are living off of the taxes and the people that are paying the taxes. Thanks very much.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else on the phone? Call out your name, please. Okay, I believe that concludes present to speak at this time. As a reminder, there'll be one more opportunity at the end. What?
Mike, I have 3 or 4 emails in the meeting comments.
Oh, good.
Do you want me to read them out loud?
Yes, please.
Okay. There's somebody named Patrick Lord of 220 River Road that just said, please include me to speak during public comment period, but it seems like he didn't make it. Mike Iacampo of 68 Latham Road said, please stop nickel and diming our educators. Please give them what they need. Do not restructure or make any cuts to their budget. Leave their budget where it is. That's from Mike and Danielle Iacampo. Lisa Finkelman wrote, Dear Board of Education, I am writing to urge you to fund Willington Public Schools so that we can continue offering strong education to our students and continue to keep tax-paying families wanting to live in our town, as well as attract new families to move to Willington. A town with weak schools is not a place families will choose to live. Our experience with Willington schools for our child was wonderful, and he was prepared to go to a top college as an outcome of all the hard work the talented professionals of Willington Public School put into him as a student. We are very grateful to everyone in the district for their hard work and dedication. Schools are now facing their biggest challenge in decades at a very trying time. Teachers have had to put in long hours teaching in ways no one has had to do previously. Many have spent countless extra hours under stressful situations to continue to provide top quality educations for Willington students. It is important to support these teachers by funding schools so they can continue to run properly. Cuts to schools hurt students first of all. Of all expenses a community has, education of our young people is my top priority, even though my son is now graduating high school and I don't have other children in our public schools. The future depends on our producing a highly educated group of young people ready for what the future brings to them. They will one day be the ones to decide many of our own fates as we become elderly. A zero budget means cuts to the schools. I do not support cuts at this time. I certainly do not support a negative 3% budget, as that would have severe repercussions on the district's ability to offer needed services to students. Among people I know, everyone supports funding our schools, not cutting the budget. I hope that the board will support the schools by maintaining funding. And finally, from Rufus Klein, dear board members, please do not make any cuts to our education budget in Willington CT. Ever since we moved to Willington in 2000, we have been proud of our schools and library. Education matters in Willington. When I visit the third graders each year at Center School, I get to see firsthand how wonderful the teaching staff is and how engaged the students are in learning, reading, and writing. My husband and I love having a beautiful library in our hometown. Education comes first in Willington. We love living here. Please, as dedicated people working hard to balance our budget, protect the wonderful services that students are receiving at Center and Hall schools. These are difficult times during this COVID-19 pandemic. Increasing our budget is not practical now, but keeping what we have is. Thank you for all your hard work and good judgment. Sincerely, Susie Klein, 43 Liska Road. Those are the emails.
Okay, thank you. Would you include those when you do the minutes, please?
I will.
Mike,
Yes.
this is Ann Grosjean. I was having a hard time getting my microphone on. May I speak?
You may.
Okay, thank you very much. I've been on the board for 7 years, and for Board of Education. For 7 years, we've been cutting the supplies, the materials, everything that is not contractual. So we are to the point where it is absolutely bare bones. I think we have $6,000 and some change for school to get books, which for schools is really tough. The other thing is we can be very, very proud of our class sizes. Those small class sizes are really going to pay off in the fall when we have to develop a plan to social distance our children. So it's really important that we keep our programs, keep our personnel. As a resident, to know that my taxes have gone in to build up the fund and build up the fund and build up the fund, that's great for a rainy day, but we're at that rainy day right now. And I would hope that you would accept the education budget as it is, as well as other departments. I believe that every department has submitted a budget that represents their needs. So I would support supplementing the budgets with the rainy day fund and not increasing the mill rate, which would help the people who have lost their jobs and are not able to pay more. Thank you very much. Thanks for your hard work too, for all.
Thank you for your comments, Ann. Anyone else in present to speak? Okay, let's, Mike, you can mute the extra microphones now, and we'll move on to the next item, which is old business. Item 1 is response from Board of Selectmen, Selectwoman's office to the Board of Finance questions. For anyone who's listening from the town, after last Thursday's marathon meeting, board members had questions. I gathered them on Monday and sent them to the selectmen right before their meeting, so there wasn't a lot of time to react, but we do have, some of it was dealt with at the selectmen's meeting Monday night, and the rest are answers. I'm going to go through the letter quickly for everyone's benefit. There was a question from the Board of Finance to the Board of Selectmen about the MOU that was signed, extending the bargaining unit agreement for 1 year and providing the 2% raise. The response back is the town attorney addressed this issue during the Board of Selectmen's meeting. I'm waiting for a written legal opinion that you requested from the town attorney, which I will forward. Just as a note on that, the legal opinion did come in subsequently and has been shared with the board members, supporting that Erica did have the legal authority to execute that signature on the agreement. Continuing the comment from Erica, the issue of obtaining an MOU was discussed at Board of Selectmen meetings. There was not an intention ever of breaching public participation. I would say the exact opposite, as it was addressed in a virtual public meeting and recorded in minutes. A copy of the MOU is attached to this communication per your request. Item number 2 was capital improvement plan. We had asked about the process of approval and how that is governed in how that was handled currently based on the town rules. And the response was, I looked at the approval procedure you referenced and discussed with the business manager. We currently follow all of the steps with the exception of sending the entire plan to planning and zoning for review. This was a practice in place until several years back. Before this current Board of Selectmen was in place. The projects are now reviewed on an individual basis prior to appropriation by the Board of Finance and any town meeting. To question 2, within capital improvement, she agrees that the committee will need to come back to the table to discuss the capital plan. The chair can call a meeting at any time using the virtual platform. The Board of Selectmen has tried to be proactive in these unusual times to balance the current fiscal needs of the town and to honor the plan that was previously agreed upon. Answer number 3 in that, prior to the emergency, the only year that was approved was year 1, and the CIP was anticipating another meeting to complete the out years. When this did not happen, the Board of Selectmen acted to make adjustments. The Board of Selectmen again worked, hearing concerns from all parties, and adjusted to match those concerns. Number 4, since the last Board of Finance meeting, I took some time to go over the CIP plan. I presented a change in the plan once again to the Board of Selectmen Monday, May 18th. The Board of Selectmen approved the revised CIP one-year plan. It is attached here for reference. The plan includes previously committed funds, for example, leases and bonds, and 5 new projects. The reasoning for these items was emergent necessity and safety. The projects approved in the plan by the Board of Selectmen are as follows. A, boiler pumps and valves for Hall Memorial School, new boiler for town office building. That was B. C, CPR device and defibrillator for ambulance. D, bunker gear for Willington Fire Department number 1. E, replace oil tank at Willington Fire Department number 1. And F, a fund transfer to the capital reserve of $180,356. Question 5, see the comments below in response to question number 6. That is, I reached out to Rich Roberts at Halloran and Sage, who helped in crafting the executive orders that I've referenced. When I explained to Rich that we approved the plan at our annual town meeting and that year 1 is part of the budget appropriations, this was his response. I hope that this helps to clarify what I was saying. And then in different type, I believe this is the response from Rich at Halloran and Sage. I think you're on track with the Board of Finance, that the Board of Finance would have to include year 1 in the budget that it adopts under the existing executive orders, since that includes the actual appropriations for the 2021 fiscal year. None of the other budgetary or non-budgetary fiscal action executive orders appear to cover the adoption of a capital plan for future years. The 2 options that I would see are 1, have the Board of Finance approve only the year 1 capital under the executive order and also approve the conceptual provisions for years 2 to 5 with the understanding that it's not binding and will be changed each year with when the annual budget is adopted. Or 2, have the Board of Finance approve year 1 capital appropriations under the executive order and table the adoption of the balance of the plan until it can be approved by a town meeting. Because it's merely a planning document, it doesn't appear to be the urgent type of action that the Board of Selectmen could take under Executive Order 7JJ. I guess you could also do a combination of 1 and 2, having the Board of Finance adopt the one-year appropriations and recommend years 2 to 5, subject to future town meeting ratification. That's completion of the lawyer's response. On to the questions about the revenue collectors and the added hours. The response is the assistant revenue collector's normal hours are 3 days at 18 hours per week. In the proposed budget, we have her working 45 weeks at 18 hours, her normal scheduled hours, and 7 weeks at 28 hours weekly. The additional hours would have her here 5 days a week. The additional hours are planned to be used as follows. 4 weeks in July, our busiest.
That should be 3 weeks in July. That was my error.
Okay.
So
so 3 weeks in July, our busiest collection time. This would allow 2 staff in the office daily to process payments and answer any questions as needed. In the prior year, the office was staffed by 1 person on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, with 2 on Monday and Friday. This caused quite a backlog of mailed payments and deposits to be processed. I believe we were into August before all of the mailed-in payments had been processed. Not knowing what October will bring, it's possible that the hours could be combined between the 2 months. And then 2 weeks in January for the second installment and supplemental bill collection, and 2 weeks during the year to cover vacation. And then an added note, the revenue collector's normal hours are 30 hours per week. We are looking to increase to 35 hours per week to full-time status with no increase in salary. Increased responsibility with the collection of all revenue for the town office building, no longer just tax collection. Verifying and processing of check deposits, remote depositing, verifying cash, completing deposit slips, and coordinating all department cash deposits. That is the end of the letter for the selectmen's response. Thank you, Erica, for all that information. And the MOU for the collective bargaining agreement was attached to that email. Marissa, I did forward you this information. Okay, any board questions or comments on those answers before we move to the next? Okay, seeing none. Item 2 of old business, budget appropriations. Donna requested and I inserted item A for fund forecast update. The latest version of that came in this afternoon. I did email it to people. Peter, do you want me to send it to your other email? You can give me a thumbs up.
I would.
Okay. Donna, would you like to go over this a little bit?
Yes, I
Okay.
can walk you through the changes.
All right, go ahead. Well, I'm forwarding it to Peter. You go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I updated the forecasted fund balance to show that at the end of the year, we believe that the revenue is going to be more than budgeted, and we believe that the expenditure budgets are going to be less than budgeted. So the revenue we think is going to be more than budgeted by 100,000. The expenditure budget's less than budgeted by 300,000. So that will add $400,000 to the fund balance. So the forecast is now for 2.9 million, almost $3 million in the fund balance, or 16.9% of expenditures. Last time we talked, it was 14%, 14.6, but I really think it's going to be more like over 16.
Okay, Donna, thank you. And can you just quickly clarify the basic reasons for this change? What is the reason that you feel we're 100,000 more on revenue, and why do you think we're 300,000 lower on expenses?
The $100,000 on revenue is traditionally the tax revenue that is the supplemental bills, and so every year we see consistently $100,000 more in tax revenue. So I think that we are going to see that again this year. And the $300,000 is a joint number that I received from Erica and Phil as they went over their budgets pretty closely this past week.
Okay, thank you. Board questions on this latest fund forecast? Matt Clark.
So $100,000 is forecast in revenue that wasn't projected, and now it is. And the source of that is, it's always, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what we've experienced in past years. So we're going to experience that this year as well. Am I hearing correctly?
You are hearing correctly. The supplemental brings in $100,000 in tax revenue. And we don't budget for supplemental. That's my understanding. We never budget for supplemental.
Okay, Donna, do you understand the reason for that? Is that because it's not always reliable, or because you don't know what it will be until partway through the year, because that's why it's supplemental?
I think it's because it's partway through the year. So
Right.
we don't, when we design and develop the revenue budget, we don't know what it is, and so it doesn't get into the budget.
Understood. More board questions on the fund forecast? Christina.
So does the revenue projection for next year change with that? Or are you saying that the number has changed for this current year, or
this current year? I'm saying this current year.
and so that'll be sort of extra in the fund balance. But so then shouldn't we add it into the equation for next year as well? I don't know.
Oh, Mike?
Yes.
I think that if we haven't been adding it in because it's supplemental and we're unsure of it, I think that the guess that we're going to be more sure of it this year than we were last year is probably not correct. So I don't think we should be adding that in.
I don't think we should add it in either, because I think the worst case scenario is that we don't get any supplemental. And so we shouldn't put it in the budget.
Right. So I think the difference, just to make sure, Pete, that we're clear on what we're talking about, I think we can add the 100 in because we now know
Right,
what
the
the
100 in for this
supplementals
year,
in
but-
this year are, but we should not try to predict any for next year. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I thought Christina's question, and I may have been completely wrong, was couldn't we add it in for next year because we get it every year? But I don't think I may have misunderstood her.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're thinking about all the different variables so that we don't get it wrong next year. That's all.
Okay. Any more
But
board
basically, what we're saying now is that we're going to assume that there won't be any, and so that's just as good. That's a prediction. So
Right.
I'm good with it.
Other board questions or comments on the updated fund forecast? Okay, let's move on to capital program. We had some discussion about it last week at the meeting. There was more discussion, obviously, at Board of Selectmen. We got a revised capital plan from the Board of Selectmen, which was noted in the letter I just read you and was also emailed to all of you. So I'll entertain conversation on the capital program. Matthew Clark.
So which line item would this pertain to? Is this capital reserve or capital expenditures?
It pertains, the capital program pertains, both of those are affected by the capital program. And we'll obviously get into those when we, in the next item on the agenda, we'll actually make appropriations to those areas. But both of those relate to this.
Understood, thank you.
As well as other funds that are essentially called off-budget funds, like the Fund 17 generated by ambulance billing, things like that. More comments from board members? Stephanie?
You're muted.
Jeff Summers.
There you go.
Sorry. I'd like to say something about the overall philosophy of cutting everything or moving everything out in the capital plan. I just feel strongly that this is not the time to decimate our capital spending. I'm not saying we should do anything willy-nilly, which I don't think this town ever does. But I feel like right now, when the Fed has turned out a 1/4 point interest rate, and the bidding process is probably much handsomer now than it would be in the future. I just think putting these projects off, many of which have waited for years, because I've been on CIP for a little while, not as long as some, and we just keep pushing things off and not doing it, and things. For instance, the Hall School entryway. I know it's near and dear to people's hearts, and including our first select woman. But she proposed that as a cut to deal with the times and framework we're in. That, and I can list some other things. The senior center bus. I would love to see the beginning on Village Hill drainage, which we've really known about for, is it 2 or 3 decades? The Liska culverts, I just think that it's not, just philosophically, it's not the right time to sort of act as if this CIP and the capital improvements should just be down to a nadir. I don't think it's smart. I think it's penny wise and pound foolish. I think it's the right time to be looking into making these enhancements. So for all kinds of reasons, it's actually a great time to look at bonding. So I would like to propose that we restore somewhere around 50 or 60,000 at least to do the Hall School entryway. I think 2021 is their centennial. I can't imagine people coming back to visit their alma mater or having any celebrations or anything, whether we're in big groups in those days or not. By then, I can't imagine that. I don't like to think of the kids who go there not having a more upbeat entryway when they come into school. And I think that's really crucial. I think the senior center bus, which would be the only vehicle they have with a lift for those who are mobility impaired, I think that's crucial. And on the second tier, I guess I would put in a couple of other things like painting the Hall School library and the senior center paint job that they've asked for maybe 3 years now. I think frankly that this is not for off budget items. I don't think we should completely remove the building committee consultants for looking at the future of schools. I think that would lose a whole year in this process. It's going to take many years to get our heads around as a community. I think to just like give them no budget doesn't make sense to me. I would recommend restoring half of that, 50,000 instead of the 100,000. And I also would put a word in for the Willington Hill First Response Vehicle for 65,000. That is Fund 17. I know that we're trying to be careful, but we know that there's going to be some reimbursement of some of our first responder expenses now due to the pandemic. I think our fund balance is such that we shouldn't be cheap about this. It's kind of like cutting your household budget or your discretionary spending, but and cutting that year after year after year, but not attending to the hole in your roof. And I just don't think it's smart to do that as a town. So that's just a philosophy that I would put on the table, and I would really like to give some serious consideration to taking care of our capital improvements.
Thank you, Stephanie. Other board member thoughts on that? I know, Jeff, you had mentioned a little bit about a concern about that last week. I'm not sure if you have any new thoughts to add to that or if anyone else does.
Yeah, I'll agree with some of Steph's philosophy there. You have to maintain your infrastructure. You have to do maintenance. It would be nice to paint the front of Hall School. I believe the centennial would be the 22-23 school year. I'm pretty sure it was dedicated in 1923. Regardless, it's a focal point in town, and it always, within the past few years, it does seem like that building has been neglected for various reasons. Originally there was stuff in that capital plan that it didn't seem to make sense at this time. So, but now it seems like we just went the other way and cut absolutely everything out of it.
The comments, Matt?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful if we could put this in context. We approved 45, I counted them, 45 line items, I think, last meeting. And I think we have, I don't know how many we have to go, like 4 or 5. We have Region 19, we have Board of Education, Capital Reserve, Public Works, and Revenue Collector. I totaled up where we were with our expenditures, approved and proposed. So what's already been approved plus what's been proposed for Region 19, Board of Education, Capital Reserve, Public Works, and Revenue Collector. it comes out, unless I'm wrong, I think I got this right. It comes out to a $23,000 increase. It's 0.13%. So we're at zero. You know, I think if we want to increase the capital reserve, as Stephanie, you know, as capital spending, as Stephanie indicated, we can make some adjustments. But I think just taking them one at a time doesn't really give us the big picture of where we are in terms of the overall budget, you know, approval process.
Okay, just for clarity on that, Matt, the 5 items we have are Revenue Collector, Public Works, Capital Reserve, Capital Expenditure, and Board of Education. Those are the 5. Region 19 is not in the, Region 19 is not, I don't believe, is on the list unless I missed it somewhere on the bottom.
Oh, Mike, they did, Region 19 was approved on
They
their
approved
own.
their own.
Right, that's what I thought. Yep, okay.
It'll be included, I believe it's included in just your mill rate discussion.
Okay. So to Matt, to your comment, I think that's what this conversation is trying to figure out how to talk about individual things, but in the larger picture too. Erica, Stephanie's bringing up specific things. Obviously, this board cannot instruct the selectmen on funding certain projects. What are your feelings if the board decided to add a certain amount with projects in mind? What are your feelings on essentially taking that guidance and carrying those through, or do you want to reserve the judgment on the projects as is belongs to the Board of Selectmen? Do you want to continue to reserve that?
I think it's best to do that, and it may be worth, you know, at some point, I think it would be beneficial for the CIP to come together. To Christina's point last week, and I heard that and I agree, we need to look at the out years. I think this is one of those unusual years where we look, I sat with many of you on CIP and we worked really hard to come up with a plan of things that we really needed. I didn't want to cut any of them. But there's just not enough funding to do everything that we needed to do, and trying to be prudent. A lot of those are near and dear to me. I know the Public Works, we talk about a backlog in their trucks. This is only going to make that worse. I hear the truck at Willington Hill, but what I will say right now is all of their trucks are functioning, and then that they work. By putting money into the capital reserve, there is a mechanism in place to take funds from the capital reserve to replace something in the event it needs to be replaced. And the executive orders, as long as we're in this world, allow us to be able to spend out of that for emergency decisions. So I wasn't happy about any of it. I think the front of hall school really needs to get done, but it's not keeping the building from falling down yet, knock on wood. And so that's really why I made the suggestions that I did, and the other 2 selectmen agreed with the plan without making any different suggestions. So we didn't change what I had proposed. So I think it would be best if the decisions go back there. If you think there needs to be more spending, you can put money into either 930, that capital expenditures line item, or into the capital reserve. The capital reserve requires that we go to a town meeting. 930 does not. Just keep that in mind when you look at it. So we do go back to the townspeople when we can have a town meeting at some point.
Okay, thank you. Steph?
I'm just wondering how reserve works on items that have already been passed by the voters in town meeting, i.e. the building committee.
So the building committee could come back to the Board of Finance and ask for more funds, and the Board of Finance could appropriate those funds, and then we follow the process for a town meeting after that. So because there is money in the capital reserve, something like that, it doesn't necessarily mean it's held off for a year. It just isn't necessarily a named project. It's not a specific project that for sure is going through, but there's an opportunity for anyone to come back to the Board of Finance and to ask for funding for something, and then you determine whether or not it's truly needed and if we have the funds for it. And so in this case, we turned the dollars that we were spending out of 930 and put them back into the capital reserve so that there was still funds there. So the projects that were removed out of 930, the money was put into capital reserve so that there is still money being put into capital.
Pete Tanaka?
Now, Peter, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry, Erica. So the process now for the funding for the committee, the school committee, the process is not that much different now than it was before. It's just that it's in a different line item. Is that how I understand you?
Well, I mean, first there has to be a committee, right? We've agreed to formulate a committee. We haven't met one. When they are seated and start doing some work and don't know when that will look like and what that will be, then they could come and request money. And it will either go through or not. But, you know, you'll hear the argument when it comes. So there's a mechanism in place. It just doesn't mean that we specifically plan for that item in this fiscal year.
Thank you.
I think that's the difference.
There was some discussion in there about reconvening CIP. Thoughts on that? Anybody? Stephanie, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to move that the Board of Finance formally ask the Selectmen to reconvene the CIP as soon as possible. I don't think we should wait till the fall. I think
you just ask the chair, Steph.
What?
The chairman can call a meeting. There's a chair of CIP.
Right. So, okay. Well, so,
all right, so we have a motion.
Yeah.
Stephanie, repeat your motion, please.
My motion is for the Board of Finance to formally ask the Board of Selectmen to reconvene the CIP, or to have the chair of CIP reconvene the group to revisit the 5-year plan and, you know, whatever, prepare it for, you know, to basically redo the work that they've already done, but in this new backdrop to reconsider our 5-year plan. I feel like we're kind of going out on a limb in a little bit here, and that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, so just to pare that down, your motion was to have the Board of Finance ask the Board of Selectmen to reconvene CIP.
As soon as possible. I mean, in this summer at least.
Okay, I'm trying to pare down what the wording for the motion is, though.
Okay, that is.
Can I make a friendly amendment? Your Board of Finance could just ask it to be reconvened and skip us having to have a meeting to do the same thing. I think you can ask the CIP committee to meet.
Well, they're a subcommittee of the board. Well, hang on a second. Let's get the motion. Let's follow our proper procedure here. We have the motion. Do we have a second?
I will second that, Mike.
Okay, Jeff has seconded. Okay, so discussion on the motion. Erica, the CIP is a subcommittee of the Board of Selectmen, correct?
No, it's an advisory committee. It's a separate committee, and so it's an advisory committee simply. So the Board of Finance could, it could go either way, Mike. I'm just saying it could be just as easy if the Board of Finance feels strongly about it, and it's most of you. You could just draft a letter from the Board of Finance to the chair asking him to, you know, bring everybody back to the table.
Understood. Okay, we thought we had, my thinking was we had to go back through the Board of Selectmen. Okay, Matt, you had a comment?
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not cleared for voting on things for 5 years out. I mean, what I read was that we can approve capital expenditures for this year only. The rest of it is off the table until we resume normal practice and have regular meetings, isn't it?
That's correct, but that's not relevant to this, to reconvening the committee. The committee only advises a plan. Nothing gets approved. They create a plan, they sort out the projects and the costs, and they bring back an advisory document.
We just didn't finish that process. So if we look at Rich's discussions, you could just approve the 2 items that fall under your purview. They can get back together to look at the 5-year plan when a town meeting can be convened. Then a whole plan based on some of the changes that were made is ready to go.
Right, and the benefit of CIP meeting is they could provide some advisory or some sorting, just like is always done, and report that back in an advisory state, which would help the Board of Finance when agencies do start coming back to the Board of Finance saying we want an appropriation out of capital reserve. we might have some working document or discussion to work from. Other discussion on the motion? Can we, Stephanie, are you willing to accept a friendly amendment that we instead of going to the Board of Selectmen, we go directly to CIP?
That's fine.
Okay, Jeff, is that okay for your second friendly amendment?
Perfect.
Okay. Any more discussion?
What's the purpose of the meeting to start with?
It's what CIP always does, is to revisit their, develop their plan.
So why do we need to revisit it?
Because we didn't finish it.
Because we don't have one.
Right. We didn't finish it, and then it got disassembled.
And I would just add, Mike, just for clarification, it's a group that listens to everybody's capital improvement programs and asks them questions and vets the projects, and then puts its best judgment together in a collaboration and recommends the 5-year plan to the selectmen in the town. So, there's a lot of thought that goes into it. It's not just cut this, leave this kind of thing,
Okay, I understand.
Erica,
Yeah.
you had a question.
No, I think I was just gonna, a little bit of what Stephanie said. We have a 5-year plan. We completed 1 year. COVID hit before we got back to finish. We were almost finished with the plan, but boy, it needs a whole lot more work now that many of the things from year 1 were pushed out, and it almost takes a whole new look at years 2 through 5. As we all have sad faces at the thought of it took a lot to get to where we were.
Matt, go ahead.
So why does this have anything to do with the Board of Finance? I don't understand. Can't the CIP committee decide that they want to revisit and redo their documents and their plans and things? What is that?
Because as I just said before, we're going to have decisions during the rest of this coming fiscal year based on the budget we're approving tonight. People will come to us and say, there's money in capital reserve, and I think the columns on the front of Hall School need to get done. We're requesting money. Or I think that there's some other capital need for something that falls in the program. And if we have the advice of CIP, it makes it a lot easier to make those decisions, to understand the priorities, and also to see how it's going to affect our appropriations next year, because what we don't do this year potentially might have to be done next year. And a big challenge with that is we have a lot of payments that are already committed in the CIP plan as well. So that's how it helps sort all those things out.
I think, Matt, to your point, they can get back together. This is, your board saying, we want you to, and now we're requesting it so that it gets done.
Right.
That's how I see it. That's what I hear from staff.
Any more discussion on the motion?
So if we request it, does that mean they have to do it?
Well, I mean, we don't have the force of law.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of the people of that committee are sitting here in this meeting, so it'll probably.
That's a fair point.
We just need the chair to call it. That's all.
Okay. Marissa, can you call the vote, please?
Yep, sorry, I had to unmute myself. Matt,
No.
Christina,
Yes.
Jeff,
Was that Steph or Jeff?
Jeff,
Stephanie, can you try again?
Yes.
Jeff Kruzak,
Yes.
yes. Okay. There's a lot of background noise going on somewhere in the meeting. Stephanie,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
okay. 5 yeses, 1 no.
Motion passes. Thank you. What else on capital program? Do you have any more? Steph, I know you were, I think last discussion you were talking about wanting to add in this particular year. Now we're asking that CIP reconvenes. Does that end your conversation, or do you still have?
Well, I feel like, there should be things that happen, soon. I mean, we're in the sort of construction period now, or a better time to be competitive with anything that we would want to do. I mean, just for the purposes of discussion, I'm going to move for to restore 52,800 in projects to CIP in the first year, and those would include 17,800 for the Hall School entryway upgrade, 15,000 for the used senior center handicap bus, 12,000 for the senior center painting job, and 8,000 for the Hall Memorial Library.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? I'll second it for discussion purposes. Board discussion on that? Question for Erica. I think if I understood correctly, when I asked this question a few minutes ago, you were saying that you would rather reserve judgment, the privilege to make the final decisions on capital under your purview, as opposed to us instructing certain projects to go back into the plan.
So I would say that this board would put in the dollars, and the projects would be decided at a different level. And if a CIP reconvenes, we can have the conversation there and then move it to a selectmen's vote, which would be the typical way things would go. So I just, and I'll ask Mr. Stevens, the painting and the roof at Hall School, I'm sorry, in the library wouldn't happen if the roof isn't done this year. So that may be one of those things that if there's no roof completed in this year, then the painting wouldn't get done. They were tied together, and they're kind of in limbo right now in the roof.
That's correct.
Yeah, roof is next on my list, but we have a current motion to deal with. More discussion on this motion?
Right, it's just part of the dollars for that motion. I just thought I'd bring that to your attention. Understood,
absolutely. Yep.
Mike, can I remove that 8,000? And so we have the discussion. It kind of, is a little bit before we're talking about the roofing thing. That's why I wasn't really going to jump in just yet with this, but since I have, can I remove that 8,000?
Yeah, if you want to make a friendly amendment, I seconded it, so I'm fine with that.
Okay. So that would be 48,800.
Hey, Mike Perry.
Yes, I think I'm getting a little confused here, but let me just say what I think I'm hearing is we're calling a meeting for the CIP to meet. And if they meet, are they the ones that's supposed to be looking at these items that was just brought up and to say yes or no, or say, yeah, we want to do this, or we want to do that, or whatever? Am I correct so far?
Yes.
They already have put these things on the plate.
But okay, but then why are we trying to say that we want to put something back in when that would be the CIP? It would be their position to do that, not us, right?
But we have to approve the funding for it.
So we're putting the cart before the horse, right? Don't they
Well,
have to-
no, the cart was behind the horse until March.
I think, Mike, they were in, what Steph's saying is they were in year one, and then we cut them out trying to make some really drastic changes because of these times. They were things that CIP and the selectmen had already approved to be in this current budget. Steph, I just, to your motion, the only dollars that you would be addressing specifically for your budget would be items that are either 930 capital expenditures or in 04. So I would say that your motion may need to adjust those items or the numbers that would go into those buckets per se.
Well, this is all for 04, I believe.
Okay,
So
but I
some of
still
them
have some
were
more.
not, so I just want, to be sure.
I still have some more questions to go along with that to make sure that I'm in line.
Go ahead, Mike.
So, if we do this and we approve all the funds that Stephanie brought up, and let's just say CIP does too, and couldn't those funds, didn't I hear you say that we could put those into the reserve instead of to the line items that we're talking about now? And then we could go ahead with the budget and see where we're at, and then we could decide how much needs to go into the reserve for these items.
Well, partially yes, but it's two different reserves we're talking about. We would have to make an appropriation, which is item 3 during our appropriations, to capital reserve, which is different from the fund reserve or general fund. So it's the same dollars. It's just making sure we all understand where those dollars are going to be put.
Yeah, and I would just kind of like to see where we're at before we start adding more money to it.
I second that.
Okay, more discussion on the motion, Erica?
I have a question for Steph. So I'm trying to correlate what she's asking for with and what would need to happen at the Board of Selectmen level. So are you saying add an additional $44,000 to the capital reserve, or are you advocating for the selectmen to approve the 44,000 of the money that's in the capital reserve for those specific projects?
Well, I was actually the total would be, I think, 48,800. The projects I mentioned are all in 930 now. I mean, that's where they were cut from.
Okay.
So I was
putting money into 930.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to understand.
I misspoke when I said the reserve before.
I've done that a million times.
All right.
Okay, more board discussion on the motion we have on the floor, which is to add $48,000 to the capital reserve. Keep in mind, we're not making a final appropriation on capital reserve yet, because that comes up later in the agenda, and it would be this money plus other money.
I believe this was it for capital reserve or capital expenditures?
I'm sorry. Thank
Okay.
you for clarification. The capital program, I should have said. This is additional money to the capital program, but we will still have to do appropriations in the next agenda section.
So capital expenditures will go up by $48,800.
That is what this motion, that's what this motion is looking for. Any more discussion? Okay, let's vote on the motion. Maritza, you're on.
Christina?
Yes.
Peter?
No.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Matt?
No.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
That's 4 yeses, 2 nos.
Okay, thank you. Next, in capital programs still, Phil Stevens, could you update us on where we are on the roof? Last we knew, and I hear Erica's comments that there's some question about the roof program. So if you could give us an update on where you think that is, please.
Yeah, basically the roof is on hold, and the main reason is just simply because of when COVID-19 hit and everything shut down. Thankfully, the roof patching is working extremely well. That office is the same office. The Office of Policy and Management is the same office that's being overwhelmed with all the work that's being done right now because of COVID-19. And the architects, when we had opened bids and we were had looked at some of the architect bids, they had shared that it was going to be extremely hard to do a lot of the work through this method, not being able to meet in person and look at maps and things like that. And that same grant process goes to, after you work with the architects, goes to the state. So it was just going to be a significant challenge. I was also told that the big rush for everyone to do roofs is in the summertime, and that we may see savings if we do it off season. Off season is basically any other time than summer. So right now it's on hold as things start to open up, and I'm hoping that the COVID-19 business slows down for the Office of Policy and Management, that we can get back to some roof world and get that back on track to get it completed.
Okay, so thank you for that update. A couple questions on that. Because of thinking about this fiscal year, which is obvious, this coming fiscal year, and the potential of the when the job gets completed, which would define when we might see the money coming back for the state's reimbursement. What are your feelings on the possibility of it happening in this coming fiscal year, the fiscal year we're trying to plan for?
I think because you're talking about 2 full school roofs, I think, you have to have a good stretch of time to be able to do it. I've been told you can do it with students in school. It's a little more disruptive, but depending on what happens, are we going to go back to school full time? I don't know. But I can't speak to I can't guarantee that it's going to happen from July 1 to July 1. I don't know.
And what if the other things like the state and the architects are available and willing to work? Is it still a priority on your end to keep it moving? I guess my question is, if the log jams can move, are you ready to keep it moving?
Yeah, I think one of the things, and I said this, I think, to Christina, and I was a little sharp when I said it, but the change with COVID-19 for us in education has just been tremendous. And the news that just came out with, reopening looks great, but when you start looking at some of the expectations, and I'm really concerned budgetary wise about next year's budget, because some of the things they're looking at are just wild. I mean, you're talking about 10 kids on a bus, and I don't know what that's going to look like. And so it's going to take a lot of time and planning for us to get to option A, option B, option C, option D.
I see you, Matt.
To get through all those items. And so that's my first priority is the kids. I'm hoping that I can get back to this roof project, sooner than later. But at this point in time, I have to make sure that the safety of, any programming we're doing in school and getting kids back to school, that's my priority.
Okay, thank you on that. Matt, you had a question?
Yeah, not regarding specifically the roof project, but this is an example of the unknowns that we're facing. Who knows how much that's going to affect Phil's budget in next year and the year after and the year after that. And we're increasing our expenditures.
Okay,
I would
right.
say.
So let's get back on the roof project. Your point is well taken. Donna, if you could just chime in here and help refresh me again on the money that's set aside. And I believe you did not account for the money coming back in reimbursement from the state in any of your forecasting. Is that correct? Donna may not be.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand really what you're saying.
I'm
Any
sorry.
money
Let me make it
from the fund balance. Now you're talking back to the fund balance and the money coming back from the state, the progress payments that are reimbursement for the roof projects.
Yep.
That goes to Fund 4, the reserve fund, does not go to the general fund. So it's 2 different funds.
Right, and you have not accounted for any of that money in any of your thoughts yet as revenue, correct?
In the sources table in the CIP budget, the progress payments are accounted for.
Okay. All right. Understood. I just wanted to make sure where that shows up. Okay. Thank you. And the money that's set aside to do the project, where is that sitting right now?
Reserve fund, Fund
Okay.
4.
Fund 4. Understood. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Okay. So that was not a motion, it was just a discussion about the roof. Any other board questions about the roof while we're here? Okay. Any more discussion on capital program overall? Okay. Let's move on to remaining department section appropriations, item C. And the first one of those is revenue collector, 0137 revenue collector. We had some information on that earlier tonight when I read the letter from Erica. So board discussion on revenue collector. I know this has led to a lot of discussion in the area of adding jobs or making jobs from part-time to full-time or full-time to full-time with benefits and things like that. There was a lot of discussion in that area, and that affects both of the employees in this department, both the revenue collector going up to 35 hours, as well as the assistant collector going some weeks to 28 hours a week, the rest of the year at 18 hours a week.
I don't, Steph, I don't know who this question's for, but is there a figure that doesn't show, that would show in the benefits line for going from 30 hours, which is not full-time, right, to 35 hours? Are there, is there a package of benefits, and is there a number at her salary that?
Donna could tell you, Donna, the difference between the 30-hour per week benefits and the 35 per hour a week benefits. And they're in those benefit items.
You mean it's already presumed in the benefits line?
Yes.
Donna, do you know what that figure would be, or is that too arcane to ask?
So you are wanting to know the cost of benefits for full-time versus the cost of benefits for part-time?
Yes.
I can look it up pretty quickly for you.
Donna, you can just speak up when you come back with that. Erica,
I
go ahead.
definitely misspoke last week. It may have been the hour or not having the right numbers in front of me when I said we were increasing her days to 4 days a week to match the previous assistant, and that is not correct. The only additional hours are for those 7 weeks of time. So
you're talking about the assistant,
but I definitely said the opposite last week.
Okay. Any other board discussion while we're waiting for Donna? No.
Matt has his hand up.
Oh, I looked away for a second. Sorry, Matt. Go ahead.
That's all right. Just make sure that I'm on the right page here. So we're increasing from 76,131 last year to 82,836 this year, right?
Hang on. Moving things on the screens here. Hang on. So, approved budget in the current fiscal year is 76,131. The original proposed was 84,143, and then after we asked for cuts, the new proposed was 82,836, which is a $6,705 increase over the previous year, the current fiscal year. And then the previous fiscal year was actually higher than this proposal. The previous fiscal year was 86,715. That's what we discussed a little bit last week. Was in the current fiscal year there was a drop because of a change of the way they were working and the various skill sets that were used. And now this is a return back towards what was done over a year and a half ago, essentially.
Right. And the,
as
the
far as,
salary was adjusted to be correct to match what was in our original proposed budget. So it was trued up.
Donna, do you have that number?
The full-time cost of benefits is for a single individual is $7,844. And
And part-timer?
part-time, I'm still calculating it.
Oh, okay, sorry.
But it already is factored into the insurance line item.
Yes, it is.
Correct.
Yes.
Which you've already approved, haven't we?
Is that the reason for changing it to full-time, or is there, what is the reason?
The reason for changing the collector. So the workload certainly increased, and having the majority of the year with the new responsibilities and a less experienced tax collector certainly added to that. But now having an assistant 3 days instead of what was the 4 days a week prior. So there's an increase in workload collecting and doing the revenue. With the previous treasurer made numerous changes to revenue, the way we were handling all those things, and the majority of it fell onto the revenue department. So that was the bulk of the reasoning. And had we not gone last year with the major cut that our previous tax collector had suggested and kept things the same, we would have had an assistant at 4 days a week instead of 3. And there may not have been a need at that point. But the current census would only have us with insurance benefits for one of the 2 employees, not 2.
Okay. Okay, any more discussion?
I believe we're still waiting to hear from Donna.
Right.
Yes, it's $4,754 for part-time. Is the cost to the town.
Thanks, Donna.
Thank you. Can you guys see me right now? My screen? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Welcome back.
The sound stayed on, but I lost the screen for a minute. Okay.
Yeah, it looked better the other way.
You're not the first person to say that, Mike. Okay. Any more board discussion on collector of revenue? My only question, Erica, the principle or the concept of taking employees up to full-time status, I'm assuming, I know you'll say yes, I'm assuming went with great thought, because certainly there's the potential trickle-down effect of other departments saying, well, I'm part-time, don't I have enough work to get to full-time also, and benefits?
Yes,
any
we
thoughts
didn't
in that area?
hear any feedback like that at all. But we did give it much thought, and it was the main reason was the increase in activity in that office that was not tax collector related, that was all revenues, and the changes that were made by the previous treasurer that added work into that office. That was the main reason we felt we could justify the need. So I would say if things stayed status quo, I don't know that there would be a need for that.
Okay. Any more board discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the budget request for line 0 or department 0137, revenue collector, in the amount of $82,836.
So moved.
Second.
All right, discussion on the motion. I think we just had that. All right, Marissa, let's take it to a vote.
Peter,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, next item, line 0311, Public Works. All right, up the screen we go.
Mike,
Yes, go ahead, Peter.
need a motion to start off the discussion, or do you want to
Sure.
start the
Go
discussion
for
and then
it.
the motion?
Go for it.
I move that we, what is it? Public Works.
Hang on. Would you like some help with this?
Yeah, I move that we approve line item 0311 Public Works for $1,184,165.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Discussion, please.
Yes, Erica, does this re-including the asphalt that was previously cut and then re-added? I lost track of how many times it was cut and added.
We gave you options. We talked about what we would do if we had to go to a 3% cut. That's where that discussion was.
Beautiful, thank you.
Yes.
I thought I remembered something that
If you went to drastic cuts, we were looking at creative ways to spend that money most effectively.
okay, but that is not cut in this budget.
That is correct.
All I needed to know. Thank you.
The
Is there
dollars
anything
are not cut.
else that's major cut in this that would stand out to you?
No, not major cuts in this. There are major cuts from Troy's original request. He had requested a lot more. He certainly sees, and we agree that there are many needs within Public Works in order to enhance some things that have kind of fallen off. But a lot of those he pulled back on when we went to zero. So the majority of the cuts came out of Public Works because the majority of the increase in our budget was in Public Works.
So it's essentially the drainage and the trucks.
Yeah, but correct. That was out of CIP.
All right. Yeah. All right.
And Troy's on the line if he disagrees with that. But this
this
zero
doesn't-
is major cuts from what he would have liked and what we thought we needed.
Pete, this is Mike McCoo here. A couple of the items just of note in this. As you look up through, you'll see, like in the snow subsection, there are significant reductions for the contractor and sand and increase in salt. If you remember, there were discussions about that previously. There's also a $10,000 reduction up in traffic control equipment. So that's where some of the adjustments were made.
Thank you.
And the contractor cut was made because we have a 2-year contract and only had one contractor.
That's
Correct.
right. And we bought a truck to save that money.
Yes.
We bought another plow truck so that we didn't need that
Because
second.
we're putting one of our crew members into a truck. Yes.
All right. Matt, you had your hand up?
No, go ahead. Yeah, I was going to call the question, but.
I will second the call.
Oh, can I ask a question first? I didn't.
Well, hang on. We have to follow the right procedure. We're going to have to vote on the call because we have a motion and a second to call the question. All those in favor of calling the question? Marissa, can you?
Yeah, Stephanie?
No.
Matt?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Christina?
No.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mike?
No.
Okay,
Bethany, go ahead.
I just wanted to know what the actual spending was. Just how much from 19. What it would have been if it were kept to a flat budget.
$1,345,637.
Remember, Stephanie, in there are several employees, so that makes up, for a difference.
Okay.
Hang on.
It was $1 million
spending.
Pardon me?
Are you looking for actual spending as well, or was that not what you meant?
Yeah, I was looking for. When we asked for the 0% percent budget, we were talking about current year.
Right.
Approved budget, what is that figure?
Right, and I think that's noted in your document. We didn't.
I have it.
The Selectmen didn't do zero budget per department. We did zero budget for our selectmen.
No, I understand. I just wondered what it was.
All right, I've got the number. The current fiscal year approved budget for public works is $1,145,637.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome. Any more discussion?
I just wanted to ask about the equipment rental. I can't find it. But is the excavator, is that plan still happening, or that we had talked about?
With Village Hill, you mean?
Yeah, well, it came up at CIP because there was a request for an excavator, and then CIP said, well, why don't you rent one this year and see how it goes? But I don't know where that is in the budget.
There's zero, Christina, there's zero in the equipment rental line right now.
Troy's now off mute, so I think he's ready to speak to that.
Yeah, can we?
Go ahead, Troy.
Well, that for the rental for Village Hill was coming out of that
CIP.
CIP. There was a whole, like, it was, I want to say there was $30,000, which we needed to do those 600 catch basins. And I want to say it was like 300 feet of pipe, roughly. So that's where that was all coming from. It wasn't coming out of the regular budget. It was coming out of what was approved through or wherever it was approved. It wasn't coming out of my regular budget.
Understood. Okay. Any more questions? Okay, let's vote on the motion. Marissa, go ahead.
Matt,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
6 yeses.
Okay. Item 3, line 0504, capital reserve. All right. Just to do a level set for everybody, the current fiscal year that we're in now, capital reserve is $145,000. The original proposal was $165,011. The revised, there were a couple, there was a 0 and a -3 revision, and then there's the latest revision that came from the board, from Monday night's Board of Selectmen's meeting. And Erica, can you help me with that number? I seem to have lost it on my screen here.
The transfer to general reserve, it was 184. Wait, hold on.
Capital reserve.
Capital reserve.
180,356.
There you go. Thank you, Donna.
Yes.
180,356.
Correct.
Thank you.
So is that the number which one are we looking at here?
That's the capital reserve number that came from the Board of Selectmen's meeting the other night in the latest revision of capital program.
The dollars that were increased in that number were the items that were removed, that were would have been 930. We put them into capital reserve. So move the dollars into the reserve.
And Erica, your theme or your thought process there was they would still be budgeted as an expense. There's still a taxation. However, by moving them there, you're essentially putting them on the back burner. The money is available.
So
right?
we put money into capital, right? So we know from working through the CIP program that we have many capital needs. And this way we still put some funding into capital, but we took away any of the projects that were associated if they weren't necessarily needed. Now, again, one of those public works vehicles or that fire department vehicle that were on there, if something happens in either of the funds or other things change, there are mechanisms in place to take care of those capital improvements. If something happened to a roof here, at the TOB, there's money in capital so that we always put money in capital. We just put a little bit more than we would normally do because we removed the projects.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And again, I did that not because I think it should be this way. I agree with Stephanie that these projects need to be addressed, but it was to meet the needs and concerns in this incredibly unusual time.
Right. Okay, so we're down to only a couple items left. We have essentially 3 appropriations left. And we typically have the benefit of Donna's magic sheet up on one of the screens where we're looking at what the numbers affect the bottom line. Look at how these numbers affect the bottom line. Donna,
I think Donna can share her screen.
I think that I need permission from Mike D'Amato to share my screen.
One sec, Donna. Are you ready now?
Yes, I think the board is ready.
Yes.
Okay. Try it now, Donna.
Donna, all of your numbers are up to date so far for what we've approved, correct?
Yes, my numbers are
Okay.
up to date.
So do you have the percentage increase over 2019, 2020 with the items that we've approved plus the proposals?
No, I don't, because I don't have 1920's budget in the comparison column.
I show that we doubled where we were last meeting. So last meeting we were about more than doubled. Last meeting we were 0.13 percentage points over last year, and the ongoing tally I have is we're half a percent over right now.
And
Just so it's clarity, Matt, what number are you talking about?
The total spending for the town of Willington. We're at 17,704,603 last year. With what we've approved plus what is proposed, provided I have all this right, which I think I do, it's 17,794,000 for an increase of 89,716. It's a half a percentage increase over last year.
If Donna's number is right, it says 17,727, 719.
And we just added, right, with the motion that was passed, $48,800 was added to capital expenditures. So I need to add this here, right? $48,800. So now your spending is at $17,776,519. Last year, the approved budget was $17,704,603.
So we're $72,000 over last year's expenditure budget.
704,603,77,651. Yes, about $72,000 over, 71,916.
Okay. And the number, Donna, that you currently have in 0504, is that the new updated number from the Board of Selectmen, the 18356? Yes, oh, yes, I see it right there. It's tiny, but I can see it. Okay. Okay. Any more discussion on where we are? We are currently at the line 0504. I don't think we actually have a motion on the table yet. I'll entertain a motion to accept the budget request for line 0504 capital reserve in the amount of $180,356. Anybody?
I'd like to move that we restore into 04 $50,000 for the school building committee consultants.
Okay, we have a motion to add 50,000, which would put the number at 230,356. We have a second? Christina?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to add 50,000 back into capital reserve for the school building, for half of the original budgeted amount for the school building committee. Discussion?
Well, I just want to speak to it. I mean, I touched on it before. I don't think it's a good idea for the next full fiscal year that there are no resources for this group to tap. I understand they could go through the process of asking for money, but I think when the CIP plan was passed and the first year was looked at and discussed in much more detail than what we're able to do, there was, an agreement that should be in the plan earmarked for this sizable job that this group is going to be tackling to sort out what the future of our education facilities in town will be. And I think, part of that work includes some expertise that they may not have on the board that they will need to hire. So I just didn't want to see it stand still for a full year.
Okay. I'm holding on discussion for just a moment. Mike D'Amato, there was a tone in the middle of what Stephanie was saying, and the little alert came on saying this meeting is now being recorded. Did we have a glitch?
The recording's still running on my end, but
I didn't hear that.
when I see you, I see you're not connected to audio.
But you can hear me talking, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Seems
no.
I have audio then.
Yeah. It's still running on my side.
Okay, good enough. Thank you. More discussion on the motion. Matt?
Yeah, I think it's best that we don't move forward this year with spending $50,000 on school consultants to fund and to help a committee that hasn't been formed, that there's no one named to. At this point, where we are with town finances, I don't think it's a good idea.
Other discussion?
I'll agree with Matt on that.
I just want to mention that this is
You got cut off at least on my end there, Steph. Can you say that again?
I just want to mention that the idea of seating a building committee to look at this issue, which is going to be years in the doing, was voted on in town meeting and passed in all its iterations. We had to pass several resolutions, and we did. So I think it's a will of the people issue.
May I speak to that? I believe at that town meeting, it was told to us that there would be no money spent without town approval. That this was, the town meeting was simply for the formation of the committee, and that any money spent after that would be approved by the town. And I don't think that it's right to be sliding it in now when we don't have town approval of the budget.
Well, it still has to go to town approval though, doesn't it, Peter?
No, when we pass this tonight, we're done. We're
That's
passed.
not true.
That's not true.
It's not true. It has to go to a town meeting to approve
All right.
actual appropriating it.
All right. Oh, my error. I forgot that it's on the expenditures line instead of on the 04 line instead of on the regular budget line.
Yeah, quit maligning me, Peter.
I will try to refrain from that in the future.
Thank you.
When we get through the budget process, it is going to be on the agenda at the selectmen's level to start that. We can't put everything on the back burner. And so, we have to continue with business in the virtual world.
I would like to move the question on the addition of the $50,000.
Mike, we can't hear you. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, we lost our chair.
Mike D'Amato, that chime he heard earlier, it actually said caller 6 has arrived, and when he talked, it was caller 6.
Yeah, I can see, but caller 6 mic is open.
Our chair disappeared.
Does that mean I have to run this meeting now?
No, hold on.
It means we're rudderless. We can't do anything.
I bet he's gonna come back in.
This is an opportunity for Matt to get a cup of coffee. I'll be right back.
I see Mike. I see him with his mobile device trying to call. He just gave us a thumbs up.
His video's working.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, if it's a bandwidth issue, the audio is the first thing to go. So that may be what's going on.
Am I in?
You are.
Or-
All right. So
Okay. I guess I'm on phone audio now.
You're loud and clear.
Awesome.
your
Good
phone
to
have
know.
good
So are
battery?
you. Probably not, but this meeting isn't going much longer anyway. Let's be optimistic.
He said it.
Okay. We had a motion to call the question. We did not have a second on that. So,
Second.
Okay, we didn't have a second. Who was that?
Matt.
Okay. Let's vote on calling the question.
All right, vote to call the question. Jeff,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Vote.
The motion to call the question has been passed, so we'll go on to voting on the original motion, which was to fund line 0504 capital reserve for $230,356.
Mike,
Yes, Peter?
I believe the motion was to increase the line item by $50,000 to fund the school building committee, building committee, for a,
I think he's correct.
yes.
Yes.
Sorry, words left me
Yes.
there for a second.
So, yes, I'll take that friendly, oh no, we already have a motion, I'm sorry. Okay, so we all know what the motion is, so Marissa, let's do a vote.
Okay, Peter,
No.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Matt,
No.
Christina,
No.
Jeff,
Oh.
Mike.
No.
Okay, 1 yes, 5 no's.
Okay. Any more on the item capital reserve? Can we entertain a motion? I'll do this again. I'll entertain a motion for line 0504 capital reserve at the last proposed number from the Board of Selectmen at 180,356.
I'll second that. Jeff.
Okay.
Who made the motion?
I'll say I made the motion.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, somebody's driving by.
I'll
someone
second the
driving
motion.
by was barking.
Yeah.
I think the dog seconded the motion, but I'll try to get in there and second the motion.
Thanks.
Okay, discussion on the motion for 180356. All right, seeing none, let's vote.
Christina,
Marissa?
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Matt,
No.
Mike,
Yes.
A. 5 yeses, 1 no.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, line 0930, capital expenditures. To keep this moving, I'll make a motion to accept, hang on a second. Erica, what is the revised number for capital expenditures?
67,565.
Thank you. Thank you, Donna.
Yes, you're welcome.
Okay, I will make a motion to accept the budget request for line 0930, capital expenditures, for the latest revised amount of $67,565.
Second.
Okay, discussion on that motion, please.
Mike, I'm just confused. Is that where the 48,800 that passed 5 to 1 or 4 to 2? Is that where that goes?
Yes, and that we did do that, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yes. That
Okay.
is included in the 67,565.
Okay. I didn't understand because I thought maybe it was added to that 36,565.
No, that was an earlier number that had been revised by the Board of Selectmen. So the new Board of Selectmen number was combined with the 48,000 we approved to create 67,565.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's the revised revision of the revision that's now been revised. Discussion? Okay, let's vote.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Matt,
No.
Peter,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
5 yeses.
Okay, next item, item 5, for appropriations, Board of Education. Move up my screen here.
I move we appropriate, Steph Summers, I move we appropriate $8,860,828 for the Board of Education budget.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion on the Board of Education budget.
Yes.
Go ahead.
While I appreciate the work of the Board of Education and the superintendent for coming up with this number, which in normal times, I think is a very reasonable number. The fact that we're going up and up and up on our Board of Ed every year is kind of alarming. I understand the state mandates. I would hope that we could work with the state to get those mandates down. I'm probably going to end up voting in favor of this number, but we heard from a lot of townspeople today that Board of Education spending is the most important thing to them. Also important, I think, to the town is the taxpayer, and they we've heard spend the fund balance, spend the fund balance. I don't think the fund balance is there to spend. I think the fund balance level is that high because we've been overtaxing our citizens for a number of years. And we've been overtaxing them because we were trying to be prudent to cover stuff for the Board of Education. When Governor Malloy told us that we were going to have to help cover the teacher retirement benefits. And we've never come down from there. So we overtaxed our people for that, and we never came down. And that's why we have the fund balance we have. That's not our money to spend on this. That money is in our trust, and it's the taxpayers' money, not our money to spend. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I would like to add the comment that part of another reason that we have that much money in fund balance right now is also because we as a board and our various other people in this budgeting process have made other careful decisions as well, such as budgeting collection rates at a little below what we've succeeded in getting in revenue, aggressive work by the tax collector to collect revenue, some things that are just totally unpredictable. So there are other factors that go into that budget balance as well. I agree with the idea that that budget balance indicates that we have taken too much tax money overall from the taxpayers. But I also believe that this education budget is, while hideously expensive, is where we are. And you could call me, perhaps you could call me jaded a little bit because, or biased because I have 3 kids in the school system right now. But having been in this town my whole life and having gone to these schools also, I see the value in it. It's part of what brought me back to Willington when I lived in Columbia for 3 years, as good a town as Columbia was. Wanting to be back in my hometown and putting my kids through this school system was not just a sentimental thing. It was because I believe in this system. And unfortunately, it's incredibly expensive to have a good system.
Mike, I just like to add that at $8 million, that's not including the $1 million for the roof and several $1,000s for heating, plumbing, the front porch that we've just voted to put on. So this number is not an entire budget for the education of our children. And if you take that number and divide it by the 450 children we have in our school, which I know is not fair, I understand that's not the state equation. It comes out to over $20,000 per child. So I don't think that by any means we're skimping on our education budget here.
Stephanie, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to repeat the point that particularly right now, with the suffering that kids and families and grandparents and everyone are going through, I think the schools are a major connector. I do believe they're the fabric of a community, and they have a lot to do with restoring people to a better life. And I really feel like right now in this challenging time, they have a role that they play, and I want to keep them as whole as they can be. The other thing, I just want to address Peter's comment. I know what you're saying, Peter, because we're both on CIP and I know what you're talking about. But on the other hand, when you have a 100-year-old school and a 70-year-old school, they're going to be expensive to maintain. I mean, I don't know how that fits into this, but you know, I think it is what it is there.
Other board discussion. Matt?
Yeah, I think this is the operating budget. This isn't maintenance and repair and things like that primarily. So yeah, we're heading into a very uncertain future in terms of employment. We're heading into the biggest recession of our lifetimes. We don't know what's going to happen to state funding, whether or not we're going to need more money. as a town to pay for our schools. And I think now is the wrong time to be increasing our budget because it doesn't make much sense to me. You know, a zero budget would be taking a small decrease in services provided. We're not talking about eliminating positions, you know, wholesale. I've heard words like drastic and you know, no, it's not. Zero is not drastic to my mind. So, you know, we had a $171,000 increase. We're going to be asking the citizens of the town of Willington to be paying $171,000 more than they did last year to educate children in our school system. I look at it, a lot of those people are unemployed. A lot of them are in small businesses that are shut down, unable to earn money. You know, I wish the Board of Education could have come in at a smaller number than $171,000 increase.
Matt, do you realize that between the two school budgets, we are flat?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Okay, more board discussion? All right, let's take this to a vote. Marissa?
Am I unmuted? Okay. Stephanie,
Yes.
Matt,
Oh,
Peter,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes. Okay. Okay, that is the remaining, that's all the appropriations. Hang on here. Yep. So my last comment in the world of appropriations is we had some discussion about what people have left over. And I'd like to, you know, there's always a debate about if you balance your, if you return money at the end of the year, are you going to get hurt on your appropriation in the next year? I think this is a great year for people if they have money left at the end of the year to not feel the need to spend it so that they don't get hurt in the next year. So I'd like to move that the board sends a letter to all our budget writers saying that if they have any remaining funds to return to the general fund and to not expend, that would be looked upon favorably and not unfavorably, to encourage that this year.
Mike,
Is there
can I
a
make
second?
a comment? Oh, sorry.
Yes. Well, let me
I'm
see
sorry,
if there's
there
a
was a
second to
motion.
it.
I apologize.
Is there a second to that?
What was?
Yeah, what-
Could you repeat the motion?
That the Board of Finance sends a letter to the various budget submitters encouraging them to return any unused funding in the current fiscal year, that it would be looked upon favorably, or they would not be punished essentially.
Second? Did someone second?
No.
I'll second that.
Erica, you had discussion?
As far as the selectmen's budget goes, of the town government portion, we've been in a budget freeze for non-essential spending since the COVID emergency began. So that's why Donna spoke about a surplus that we anticipate returning here. So there really isn't any extra spending happening here. Well, that's not COVID related or necessary.
So you're ahead of me.
Yeah. Chances are, unless you do something different, we'll begin the new fiscal year in the same scenario as well.
Okay. Discussion on the motion?
Mike, it's Christina. Does that include the library the Park and Rec Fund, all of those. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, my thinking was that anyone that we send a letter to saying, please send us your budget, or please send us your 0 or your -3, it would be the same people we would say, hey, if you got any left over, that would be great, and, you'll be, it will be seen as a positive sign helping our overall budget situation.
Point of order.
As it should be.
What's your point of order, Matt?
Can we stop looking at Donna's screen?
I think I need Mike to help me stop screen sharing. I don't know how to stop screen sharing.
Stop, Donna, stop.
Thank you.
Okay, someone else had their hand. Mike Perry.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there, and I've never been a proponent to say if you don't use it, you lose it. I've never thought that was a good philosophy, but I think you ought to send that letter out to everybody that submits a budget to let them know, even for future purposes, that we appreciate them saving where they can save.
Well, that's what we would do this year with this motion. We would do that this year.
So is that a motion to I forget what you call it, add to the motion that's already on the table to indicate, save where you can save? Will there be a line in your letter, Mike, that says the Board of Finance encourages you to save where you can save? Be as careful as you can.
Well, I think it's self-explanatory. It's just saying, it'll be looked upon favorably this year if you have budget balance that you're able to return to assist the town with the budget. I think that says that. Maybe not in those specific words. Phil has a question coming in here. I'll recognize Phil.
So the Board of Ed has been talking for 2 months now about purchasing Chromebooks. That is not in our budget. What do I do with that? I don't want to be seen as spending money after you're going to send this letter, but we've been talking about this for 2 months now. And it was after our budget was submitted that Novus let us know that our current Chromebooks are in the last update series.
Phil, is that something you're not coming back for new allocation for that, correct?
No, so the board's looking probably close to $500,000 right now, after all of our savings and contracts. And I definitely think there's going to be money coming back to the town for sure. But I just don't want. I already presented to the Board of Education several items that we're waiting for the year to kind of close out in to get to our June meeting to make sure there's money there and make a decision from there. It doesn't mean they're going to spend $500,000 by any means, but I just, if you're going to write that letter, and then we've already talked about it for 2 months, I just want to make sure that's on the record.
And as far as my feeling, I don't see that as being, though I don't think those two thoughts are in conflict. I think we're not telling you to stop spending. We're saying if you have any left over, we'd love it if you'd send it back to headquarters. That's all. I mean, there are plenty of other town agencies. If we look tonight at their year to date, that would appear to have money left, but they have 6 weeks left of the fiscal year. They still have expenses. They still have purchases to make. So that's how I see it.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Let's vote.
Hey, Stephanie,
Yes.
Matt,
Come back to me.
Peter,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Mike.
Yes. Okay, so that take this out of appropriations to set mill rate. So the good news is, Donna, we need to be back to your screen. We need, Donna, we need your magic sheet back up on the screen.
Can I make a comment, Mike?
Yes.
Mark this down, Peter Latensix, you and I are about to agree on something. You don't, I wouldn't suggest that you set a mill rate until after you actually approve a budget. If you have a public hearing next week and you decide to make changes on your appropriation based on the public feedback at that public hearing, which has happened in the past, then you need to set your mill rate based on the actual spending of the budget. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, so on that theme, I mean, that could potentially undo anything we've done, right?
It's up to your board. You would all decide again. You'd take a look. If you had enough feedback on something and you felt you needed to change an appropriation, it would be possible. And if you set a mill rate now,
we could also just the same, we could undo that too, right? I mean, I'm not saying I'm not in a rush, but I'm trying to think of what are we presenting the taxpayers with? If we have a complete package tonight, including the mill rate, maybe that's better for the taxpayers to chew on to come back to the public hearing, or maybe not. I don't know. I guess I'll look for.
I think we at least need to see how it's playing out and what we think that number will be with what we've done so far. Because otherwise, how transparent can we be with them?
Right. Matt, go ahead.
So how does it work in regular years? I mean, the people of the town vote on, they don't vote on a mill rate, do they? They vote on a spending budget, don't they?
yes, and the Board of Finance sets a mill rate.
Board of Finance sets the mill rate after they vote on the spending.
After a referendum.
I don't see any reason to deviate from our normal course of what we do.
But people typically know that what the mill rate will probably be and what the different variables are. And so it doesn't exist in a vacuum.
All right, so at a minimum, it is on our agenda tonight. We told the taxpayers we were working on it. So let's get the magic sheet up and let's look and see where we are. If the board agrees that we should table setting the mill rate, we can provide a estimated mill rate in the package that goes out. So at least the taxpayers know my taxes are going up, they're going down, they're staying the same, right? So we can carry on discussion at a minimum.
Yeah,
all right,
so
Donna,
like proposed mill rate versus set mill rate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Donna, are you good?
Mike, I'm not.
Okay, sorry everyone.
Can you make me the presenter?
Yeah, I just don't want to send it to you until you're ready.
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, you have total expenditures of $17,776,519. So you have a couple of open items that are going to determine the mill rate. And the first one is, what do you think you're going to apply from the fund balance? And what do you think the collection percentage rate is going to be?
Okay. All right, so this is where we play around with numbers a little bit. It looks like right now you have 98% plugged in for collection rate. Is that true?
That's true.
It's tiny little numbers on my screen here, but and where is the line that shows what you're proposing? Applied fund balance. I see where you are.
Yes.
That's the third line down, 575.
Yes.
Okay. And then is by taxation. So it shows as less to be raised by taxation.
Yes, $13,180,059.
Mm-hmm. And Then the numbers down here, you're showing line 89.
Yes,
Is that currently where we are with, is that's calculated with the numbers we have right now?
yes,
So right now we're showing a mill rate increase of 0.12.
yes.
Okay. All right. If you, so we had looked historically at collection rates, and the worst collection rate we had in the 08-09 situation was 98.5, but that's pretty close to where we already are. So our choices here are either change the collection percentage or change the applied fund balance. You are showing, so we were at 2.995 for fund balance, correct, Donna?
Yes,
And the current 575 applied would leave us at 2.424, right? 2.424.
yes, 2.420. Yep, that's correct. It's
And what is that?
13.67%.
14.67. Okay.
Yeah, 13.67.
Oh, I'm sorry. 13.67. Okay.
Yes.
All right. What applied fund balance gets us to the 30.09?
Okay. I am just going to have to give some
Yep.
numbers a whirl.
Try a number. Yep. Try a number.
Not that much.
Okay, so $600,000 gives a mill rate of 30.15. So we need a little bit more than, so let's try 625. 625 is your magic number.
Okay. And that leaves us with 2.374
So
in fund balance.
if you apply 625, I'm sure your number's correct.
Well, don't be.
$2,370,716.
Okay.
Is that what you got?
No, I was, yeah, but that's close enough. Your spreadsheet's probably correct. Gotcha.
So
Yep.
what's the percentage
And what is
then?
that percentage?
13.39%.
13.39. Okay.
Sorry.
And then if Donna, if the 300,000 you reported earlier was returned, what will that take it to?
That includes the 300,000
already,
returned.
Thank you.
Already factored in. Okay. So for those new to the board, this is sort of how this goes. We play around with these numbers to see what comes up. So discussion on where we are right now.
I think those are good factors. The 98% I think is conservative. We still would have 2.35, 2.37 in the million in the fund balance, and we had talked about not going too much above the maximum guideline, which was 12%. This is 13.4, so that seems healthy.
All right. So for the item on the agenda of setting the mill rate, I'd like to move that we table setting the mill rate until after the public hearing.
I will second that.
Yeah. Okay, so should that be after the public hearing or the end of the public hearing? Did I say that right? What
End of the public
process?
hearing. After the public hearing is closed.
I think it should be after you approve a budget.
Right, which would be at the end of the public hearing, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So what?
So there's a motion and a second to table setting the mill rate until after the hearing closes and the budget's approved. Okay, Matt?
So what's presented to the what are we presenting to the people in an electronic format for them to think about and comment on?
Pretty much what's in the right-hand 2 columns, right, of this spreadsheet, Donna? Is it?
There's a whole document.
Yes, I in the past had a 5-page document. It was 2 pages of expenditures, by department, and then the revenue summary, and then a cover sheet that's a high-level summary of expenditures and revenue and mill rate.
Proposed mill rate, proposed fund balance application.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Yes.
So it's normal for that the people will be looking at what we're spending plus what we're transferring from the reserves, right?
Yes.
So do the people get to see what we spent last year and what we spent this year?
Yes, there's comparative columns.
Because throughout this process, we haven't been looking at that. We've been looking at original requests. So.
Well, I have been, although maybe it has sometimes been board discussion on certain lines, and I have been doing it on my 3 screens here. I'm looking at like year-to-dates and the previous fiscal years.
Okay.
We've been doing it in this document, that we've had for quite a while.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what I'm using on my screen. One of my screens.
I did have a question, Mike, that I think fits under this discussion. And that is, in the present to speak, we were asked to consider the full 25,000 request for economic development. I know that we've done all the appropriating, so I didn't know where to bring that up since that one had been covered last week. But I did want to ask that question. Is that something that is now the post-budget kind of request, or?
Well, so it's an interesting process question. My first reaction is we've already set the appropriation. I suppose the way we would revise that afterwards would be either after the public hearing, if there was enough outcry to make it worth resetting the budget for that money, or later on in the budget year, if economic development came back to us and said, we really need that extra $5,000. That's our other option. Or 55, I don't remember the exact dollar amount, but
60-20.
60-20?
62-20.
Oh, okay, 62-20. Okay. That's what I see as the right way to handle it now. I mean, it was voted on and approved at a previous meeting. So I think it's a matter for the public hearing next week, or for them to come back and ask for it later on in the year, which we're open to those. We're open to those. Those are available options that are available. I don't know if anyone else has any other ideas.
I would like to agree with you, Mike.
I would like you to agree with me. That's cool. Okay, so
I'll agree also, Mike.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm going to make a motion that the Board of Finance sends to the taxpayers.
Mike, your motion to table the mill rate is still on the table.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's an excellent interruption. Good job.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. So let's vote on tabling the mill rate.
Peter.
Yes.
Matt.
Yes.
Christina.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Stephanie.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Okay. Now I'd like to move that the Board of Finance sends to the taxpayers and the public hearing the proposed budget as we have completed it tonight.
Second.
discussion on the motion? Mike Perry.
Yes, on the fund balance that we just messed with to look at where we was at, are we leaving that at 625?
Yes.
So I would propose that instead of the 625, I would propose our balance be, instead of the 2.3 mil, I'd just leave it at, I'd take everything out of there except 2 and put it all into the fund balance. That will lower your rate for taxation for the people and more likely get the budget approved.
No.
I'm not sure what you were saying, Mike.
Okay, what we got, 2.3 in the general fund?
Yes.
I'd say take that down to just an even 2. And then the rest of that, put it into the to the fund balance, which would decrease
Well, that
the
is
tax rate and give the
that
taxpayers
is the,
a tax break.
So Mike,
okay. That
you're
is the fund balance. I think, Mike Perry, what you're saying is use more of the fund balance to drop the mill rate even lower. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct, because we've been overtaxing the people as it is. Why don't we give some of that back?
Okay. Other discussion? Matt?
Yeah, as much as I really, really like the idea of a tax break, and I commend you on the suggestion, we're going to need every penny. But we possibly could need every penny of that. They're talking about at the state level, you know, running 17% short on their tax receipts this year. And that's going to have it may have an impact on our town in terms of the state transfers we get. I'm scared about it moving forward. So I think taking more of our fund balance and giving a tax break, although I love the idea, I don't think now's the right time to do it.
I agree with those comments. I love the idea too, but we have to keep a little in the bank for next fiscal year as we see how this plays out.
Well, yeah, or this fiscal year. We may run into problems this year. I mean, we've approved what a couple $100,000 of increases in spending in an economic environment that's the worst of our lifetimes. So.
All right, more discussion on the motion. Go ahead, Christina.
I just want to say, I think we should be as conservative as we can with the fund balance, only because we haven't funded all of the CIP projects, so anything could happen. Just as we saw happen in this past year, needing a new truck, needing a new what was it, boiler, all those things, anything like that could happen. And since we're not actually funding the things that we know about, the things that we don't know about, we need to be prepared for. So.
Okay, more discussion?
So I agree with that emerging consensus.
Okay, let's vote. Marissa?
Peter?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Matt?
I apologize. I need the motion restated.
That the Board of Finance send to the taxpayers the proposed budget as it has been completed tonight.
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And we've already voted to table the setting of the mill rate. So let's go on to new business. Next steps for budget approval. Erica, I want to make sure that we take these steps carefully and correctly so we get it right. So feel free to help out on that. I think we're already planning on next week being the public hearing. So I believe the steps we need to take is we need to get this proposed budget out right away.
as soon as possible with your agenda as soon as possible so that there's ample opportunity for people to give feedback. You already have that email address. It seems to have worked. People used it tonight.
Yeah.
And you should take, I would encourage you to allow for commenting through that email address during the meeting as well, during the public hearing as well.
Okay. All right. So hang on, I'm making notes here, so pardon me to make I want to make sure I do the agenda correctly. So in present to speak, we're gonna include the opportunity for live on the email address.
Yes. So really, I would look at it as two, like you do in your normal procedures, two different meetings. You have the public hearing, and then you'll have your regular meeting following. And that's where you'll do your business. So the public hearing is separate, and then your meeting to conduct your business, whether you change appropriations and then finalize and approve a budget and then set a mill rate.
Right. So on the agenda for the public hearing, the present to speak, including live on the email address. And then I guess I can go back and look at the old agendas too and make sure I include all the steps that are in the agendas.
Yeah, I would just add adding
hearing,
the email address. It's not really a present to speak. It's just public hearing. So there's nothing but public comment in the entire.
Oh, okay. Right. All right. So I'll call it public comment.
Right.
Okay.
And
then
previous agendas for the public hearing, and that should the same. You would just add where they can email comments or mail comments if you're allowing that as well.
Right. So the agenda essentially is public comment. There really is no other action taken at that point, right? And then the action is taken in the next meeting.
Yes.
Okay, Matt, question?
So if we can take the budget down off the screen, that'd be good. So people can either email or they can speak at this public comments section, right?
Yes, you need to give them as much opportunity to participate as possible.
So, and so they can email it at any time. It doesn't, you know.
Correct. But during the meeting as well. Not everyone may have, a capability to do this, but they could send an email, I suppose.
How many, yeah, so when we run that, Mike, when you run that meeting, I would propose that those emails be read. I mean, is that what we're saying?
They would have to
be. Just like we did tonight. Just like we did tonight. Yes.
Marissa is monitoring it. If something comes in during the course of the meeting, she adds that to a comment. It's just we have to give every opportunity for the public to comment in that public hearing in as many ways as possible. Offering them to mail in their comment within the next week is also another option. You have a very short window of time, but it's certainly an option to mail, email, call in or video in.
Can they? Is the town hall open for them to drop off a note?
They could call us and come in. They could drop something if they put it in the text box, we check that daily. So if they left something in the box out there. But if they called and said they were dropping something off, we could certainly get it from them. We're doing things by appointment anyway.
So Mike, you can put that in there too, right?
Yeah, I'm adding notes right now.
Thank you.
All right, so just on that note, on the note about my notes, because we want to get this right and because there are some oddly working parts this year, I'll consult with Donna and Erica tomorrow to try to get this ready ASAP. And I will probably email it out to all of you Board of Finance members just to have you look at the agendas to make sure I didn't miss something before they get out. But I know it's hard to be checking that email regularly, but if you can, just kind of keep an eye on the town email tomorrow. And I'll try to get as much of it packaged up tomorrow before the weekend so that we can get it to the townspeople.
I would say, again, Donna is in this virtual training world, so a lot of it's going to depend on as soon as she can prepare the document. So.
Okay. Well, we'll at least have
the faster you move on your things, and then Donna will do, certainly what she can on her end.
Okay.
So when this is approved, approved in person, typically there's a question and answer. So would there be a question and answer? So are we just reading the comments and letting people talk, or are we actually, is this a two-way conversation?
That's a two-way conversation. That's the public hearing. It's just normally done in person. And then after that hearing is over, you send it off. In normal times, you would send it off to referendum.
Right.
But
And
we're
then-
going to send it to a meeting of our board to do the approval in lieu of the referendum.
But you usually send it to a Board of Finance meeting after to finalize your appropriations and then send it. So so it's the same process, but at that meeting, instead of sending it to a referendum, you're gonna do all of the things that happen at referendum.
Yes, right. That's what I meant. Yep.
You look still confused, Matt.
Well, I'm from the public standpoint, you know, I just want to make sure that we're doing this correctly. So, I mean, when we have meetings here virtually, we answer questions, we talk back and forth. Is this going to be a talk back and forth, answer questions, specific questions from the public on different line items and things like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All
right. Okay. So we did, at the previous meeting, we did set the date for the public hearing as the 28th, correct?
Yep.
We voted and approved that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. That's what I thought. All right. So anything else on next steps? Any other questions? Okay. Reminder.
Mike has his hand up.
Oh, wait. Sorry, Mike. I missed you there. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I'm a little bit confused on this too. And I just got a simple question because I just don't know. Is this town meeting and the townspeople, are they voting on this, and if they are, how did? Okay, I see Erica shaking her head. Okay, so
they are not.
Question and answer.
This board is doing all the voting. You're just hearing their feedback in the public hearing, and then you actually, everything that happens in referendum, you'll do.
All right.
There are only 6 votes for the budget instead of however many we typically get.
And that's only the process this year, Mike. That's why it's so confusing.
See, fingers crossed.
Hopefully just this year, right?
Just so you know, yesterday the question was asked by multiple municipal leaders on the municipal call, where still hoping that we could possibly have done it another way, and they made it very clear to us that this still was the only way. So, you know, we took it to the 11th hour trying to have a referendum, and it didn't happen.
Okay. All right. So we've covered the items in new business. Correspondence was sent out, but I realized based on Marissa's questions and Erica's questions that I missed the two of you on a couple of things I sent out. So I'll try to go back through my sent emails and see what I missed. I apologize for that. Somewhere along the way.
Mike,
go ahead.
Mike,
go ahead.
me as well. I'm not getting my town emails for some reason. So if you could please send it to my Gmail account, I would much appreciate that.
Okay, I will try to do it. It's difficult for me to remember everyone's personal email addresses, but I will add it back in.
Thank you.
I will do it. Okay. So correspondence we will resolve. So let's get to present to speak again, same as before. Marissa, when I'm assuming that there's nothing new in emails, correct?
I did just check and there's nothing new.
Thank you. All right. Those of you who are on video who would like to be present to speak, wave your hand, please. Okay, Mike, can you, Peter Latincich?
Hello, Peter Latincich, 97 Trask Road. Thank you, Erica, for correcting the process on setting the mill rate. That was very helpful, and I appreciate you doing that. I would be remiss, however, if I didn't express my disappointment tonight with respect to the Board of Finance's proceedings. A wise individual once said, the definition of frugality is based on a recognition that wealth has limits. I would respectfully say this board doesn't see it that way. The majority of your evening was spent on how we can increase spending, whether it be CIP or the fund balance, or virtually every area of the budget where special interests have staked out their claims. This is especially disturbing to me when the townspeople don't have the same access they normally would. I would think the Board of Finance would take a more conservative approach. But ultimately, you chose to ignore the townspeople, and the worst economic recession since the Great Depression that Willington's experienced, and increased spending. I look forward to the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Other public comment on video? Wave your hand, please, if you'd like to be recognized.
Patrick Lord.
Okay.
Road.
Hello?
Oh, yes, Patrick Lord, 220 River Road.
Okay, you're a little bit garbled, so try to speak very clearly. Patrick, are you there?
Yes, Patrick Lord, 220 River Road. Can you hear me?
Much better.
Yeah, much better.
So I know Phil Stevens has left the meeting, and I, as you, Mike, have children in the school system, and this has certainly been difficult times. The current online learning system that is set up certainly is a challenge, and I'm not sure if the budget moving forward, if this current situation goes into the next school year, this certainly is not enough for our children to learn in a proper setting. There's certainly going to be a need for an increase and a better development of the learning system for these children if it goes to an online system. So the Board of Finance should consider any other appropriations made by the Board of Education to help our children achieve the proper education that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, go ahead.
Sarah Smith, 69 Eldridge Road. I've been watching you for several nights. I just want to extend my appreciation to everybody on this board. We don't all agree, but everybody has put concerted effort to do what they think is right. And I am so grateful that we have a budget to present, and I appreciate you for all your efforts. And just because we don't agree doesn't mean we can't talk, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other public comment present to speak? If you're on a phone, feel free to call out your name. All right, seeing none, I'll go to Good and Welfare. Again, thank you to everyone for the hard work. Echoing Sarah's public comment a moment ago there, we certainly don't have to, and we probably shouldn't always agree on everything. We need different viewpoints, and we need different people to contribute to this conversation so that we can do the most prudent job we can for the taxpayers. So thank you, everybody, the public as well as the members, for that. Erica?
I want to share at this board an item for good and welfare as well. I want to put it as many places as possible. Tomorrow from 8 to 2, there'll be a food drive to help restock our food pantry here at the town office building. So you can drop off food, fill up our public works truck to fill up the food pantry. And then next Friday, the 29th, there will be another food distribution here at the town office building. But there's certainly a need for food items. So if you are able to give and can tomorrow between 8 and 2, you can drop off items here. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Pete?
Oh, don't move.
Do we have a second?
I had to unmute there.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mike.
Mike. Take care.